Hi guys, I'm Adam McCarthy from SSA Athletics, and in today's video we're going to be talking about how you run the bend as a sprinter indoors. Now you can smash subscribe, do all the social stuff that we really like, and also check out our website. That'd be really cool. You can also see that down in the description below. Now there's an important differentiation between running outdoors, the bend outdoors, and the bend indoors. Firstly, we must talk about the dimensions of an athletics track. Now why are we talking about this? Well, the dimensions of an athletics track outdoors is 400 meters. The dimensions of an athletics track indoors is that it's 200, and as a result, the bends are sloped, or in other words, banked.
In this competition.
Therefore, the way we run them is going to be slightly different. Exactly. And the banking has a major impact on the way you run around, or basically on which positions and lanes are best for you as sprinting. So generally, it doesn't really matter entirely what lane you run in. Generally, in the 400 meters, for instance, and the 200 meters, you want to be roughly between the middle lanes. Some of the other athletes who like to go out hard from the start in the 400 meters like the outside lanes, because that really helps them out with their performance. You can see a video about that right there. But generally, historically, it's always the middle lanes, because you've got other people around you to run off to, and you've also got people ahead of you to chase down, as well as people coming up from behind that you can focus, and it's not too tight and yet not too long, therefore giving you the benefits of running the straight, or more of the straight. In an indoor track, it's actually, for instance, if you're sprinting in 200 meters, the outside lane is the best lane. What? Why is that? Well, because the way the banking works on a 200 meter athletics track means that the person in lane, well, the outside lane, in this case, in this video, Matt Bowling, the guy in the black, is already halfway round the track. So therefore, they don't need to work the bend so much. They can utilize that ramp down into the next straight. Do this by elongating the arms and the stride length on the ramp. When we compare this to the inside lanes, as you notice, they'll be running up the hill. Therefore, it's a little bit more harder compared to the guy in the outside lane, in this case, Matt Bowling. He has it much easier. He strikes down that bend, utilizes the ramp down, and is able to drive off into the next bend. And that gives them momentum into the next bend in order to run faster. Utilizing the ramp down and gaining momentum is vital, especially in a 200 meter race. Utilizing the ramp down, obviously running downhill, gives you a bit more speed. Also, as you notice, the straights, depending on some tracks have longer straights and shallower bends, and some of them have deeper bends and shorter straights. But generally, compared to an outdoor athletics track, the straights are generally shorter. Therefore, we have to use as much momentum as we can off that bend in order to make sure we're at maximal velocity on the straights, because it's easier to sprint a straight than what it is the bend. You also get a lot more acceleration on the straights than what you do on the bend. The way you run a bend on the outside is that you have to lean into the bend with one foot coming round almost in front of the other, and that way it helps you to tackle around the bend, keep it close to that line as possible. And obviously for some people, when they sprint the bend in a 200 or a 400, one of their arms comes slightly across the central line of the body, also helps them to keep round. And of course, you've also got the centrifugal force keeping you close to that bend. The way you run it indoors is slightly different, in the fact that you keep your arms close to your body, unlike the guy in the white vest there who kind of almost stumbled. You keep them closer and drive your arms shorter than what you would do in an outdoor track, and that way it helps you get round that bend quicker, because it's a narrower bend and it's the stumpier bend. Of course, obviously you use the momentum down to the track as well. One thing you don't do on an indoor track is lean, because the bend is already steep enough as it is, so it effectively throws you over to one side, and therefore that means that you don't necessarily need to lean into the bend, because you automatically are already in that position, leaning as you go around the bend. Now, some athletes who are not used to running indoors may struggle over the bends. They may stumble into the bend, they may stumble off the bend, because they're not used to the ramp coming down, but also coming up and being on a bank. This, of course, will then affect their speed and overall time over the distance. Now, running a 400 meters indoors is a slightly different kettle of fish. First of all, you want to have it very similar from the first bend as what you do with a 200. You go off and you run that bend almost exactly the same, except that your overall speed will be slightly slower. Coming into the second bend, you want to be the first person coming off that bend, and the reason being is because you need to brake on a 400 meters. There is a green line across the track notified by green markers, and you have to brake at that point. You want to be the first person to brake because it's extremely hard to overtake on one of these 200 meter indoor athletics tracks. And as it's because the lanes are also narrower as well, because it's harder to overtake, especially across the banked bends, you have to overtake really more or less on the straights. And of course, if you're already in the lead, you haven't got to overtake anyone, and therefore you haven't got to adjust your stride, and therefore you're not using as much energy trying to overtake, especially in the more difficult areas, especially coming off the back straight onto the home bend. So in summary, for a 200 meter athletics track, what you have to do is sprint off, let's say for instance you're doing 200, sprint off hard, tag that bend, come off, utilize the ramp down, utilize that for your momentum as you run into the next bend. With your arms, you want them to keep them a little bit closer than what you would normally do, still driving though. And as you come up to the bend, you elongate those arms, elongate those strides, utilize that bend and tack down. If you're doing a 400 meters, because 200 meters is one lap indoors, 400 is 2 laps with it. Where on the outside, 400 meters would have been 1 lap. So 2 laps for a 400 meters. What you do, you've either got a choice, cut in early or utilize that bend, sprint down until you're eventually in lane 1. If you're already in lane 1, well, unfortunately you're already in lane 1. For the 400 meters, what you've got to do, you've got to make sure you're the first as you come up to that break point. Once you come up to that break point, you want to make sure you're in front of everyone. Otherwise, what happens is everyone will try and get in and around you and make it a lot harder for you. It's a lot harder to overtake in an indoor track, mainly because of those bends being steep